Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us for another episode of For the Sake of the Argument with Lori Goldman. We had Curtis Hertel, Michigan Democratic Party chair, who came on and answered a lot of questions, some tough ones too. College students are divided on what's happening with the Democratic Party and their feelings about Gaza, housing, things like that. Where we're skewing a little more progressive from where the middle is. He had good answers about all of that. And he talked about the shitty, fucked up messaging that the Democrats have been pushing out there for too long and how he's going to try to make that less confusing, more out there, knowing what Democrats do for us, because they do a lot more than Republicans. So if you want to hear more of this, learn, because I learn every time sitting in this chair, stuff I never knew. Join me again on For the Sake of the Argument on all social media platforms. Thanks for joining today. Michigan Democratic Party Chair Curtis Hertel, welcome to For the Sake of the Argument. I'm so pleased to have you here today.
So happy to be here. Thank you.
Listen, I assume you have a pretty hard job. I certainly wouldn't want it. And I just want to mention something for our audience. You were elected in January to this position,
February, yes.
or February for the Michigan Democratic Party Chair. So you're like the head cheerleader quarterback for the Michigan Democrats. You were elected at the convention, which was kind of crazy. I go to most of them. This one was at the Renaissance Center. And I remember I didn't even vote because we were lined up for miles.
Yes.
Are we going to have a better situation this year?
100%. First of all, Renaissance Center is not well set up for this. And we'll never do a convention there again. I can promise you that, at least as long as I'm leading this. I love this job every single day. So I appreciate you thanking me for doing it, but it is, to me, an honor. I love talking to people around the state about the Democratic Party. I feel like the Democratic Party is a force for good in the world. That's why I do what I do, and I think it's why people join the Democratic Party. It's not a social club. We're here because we believe that if we're not the ones fighting for water affordability, if we're not the ones fighting for fair wages and access to health care and all those things, there won't be a party in America that's actually fighting for that. So I really do believe this is an act of public service that I'm continuing, which is what I've spent my entire career on. On the other side of that, yes, in terms of your question about the convention, it will be in April. We'll have an endorsement convention. It'll be at Huntington Place, which I think is a much more appropriate location. And we are working on pre-registrations, digital membership cards, that will make it a much, much better process. So people will not have to wait in line for hours to be part of our convention. We will do it in a way that actually makes sense.
I'm crying tears of joy. Thank you.
No problem.
All right. You are leading during a time of a second Trump administration and a Republican majority in the Michigan State House. What does a typical day look like for you?
Oh, I wish I had typical days. Every day I spend a lot of my time planning for the future of our elections, managing staff that are doing events. You know, we are one of only 4 state parties in the country that's a full-time organizing department. So
how big's your staff?
So we have 25 people. Okay. So Project 83 is our organizing department. It's 83 counties actually being part of organizing the Democratic Party, but also we're hosting town halls in every Republican district to hold them accountable. I'm traveling across the state because I think a lot of times people felt forgotten by the Democratic Party. From Detroit to Dowagiac, I've talked to people who said, the work that I do, I don't know if the Democratic Party knows about the work that I'm doing. We don't feel like we're getting the support that we need. We feel like you don't see it. So we've been everywhere from mushroom festivals in mid-Michigan to a tour of the Upper Peninsula to Iron County, Michigan, that hasn't had a Democratic Party in over a decade. And they now have a Democratic Party with about 50 people in a bar there. For that, we did a town hall in deep red Allegan County that had over 400 people in it. There are Democrats in places people don't know about, and they're ready to go to work. And so for me, that's all very important. I also spend a lot of my time fundraising. I unfortunately, to have a staff of that large, you have to raise money as well. So I do spend a lot of my time doing that. But and talking to elected officials. One of the big things that we've instituted is having, we meet with the House and the Senate and the governor's office to try to get everybody on the same communications messaging team. And then we send that to every single club in the state. We say a message, this is what we're talking about this week. This is what's going on in the world. And I think that's really important too, because Democrats have got to get on the same page when it comes to messaging.
Yeah, we've had a rough go with the messaging lately. So what's the Michigan Democratic Party doing to push back against Trump?
That's our job a lot of the time. And not just Trump, to be honest with you, because Trump is a huge part of it, but also it's a Congress that doesn't seem to want to hold the president accountable and are going along to get along too often. And what we're seeing with people like Tom Barrett and Bill Huizenga and John James that vote for literally Jack Bergman, who literally vote to cut services, cut programs from the people of their district, vote against veterans and seniors and children that need access to food, and make those votes and then give tax cuts to billionaires. And that's really, to me, of all the things that we're seeing, the fact that they're willing to just vote against their own people. So we're holding them accountable. And a big part of that has been doing these town halls, which are my favorite part of the job. It's we call them the People's Town Hall. Republicans actually sent a message to their leaders saying, the RNC, do not have town halls. Do not meet with your own constituents. Now, when our founders started the House of Representatives, the idea was that was supposed to be the place closest to the people, that was supposed to be where you could redress government in an easy way, because it's hard to do that to the federal government.
Yeah.
It's hard to be heard. The votes are one thing, but to be unwilling to even face the consequences of...
Why would they do that? There has to be a reason. They're
pretty
good strategists.
They're scared. They don't want videos of their people asking questions about why'd you cut taxes for billionaires
I got it.
and vote against my access to health care. I mean, that's what it is. They're afraid of the voters, which is a good thing for us in many ways, but it's a terrible thing for this country. And so I'm going to be we're doing these town halls to give people a voice. We're also collecting stories there about the things that are happening and telling them through social media and through legacy media as well. And I think that's really important because people don't just want to see politicians talking about what happens. I mean, I could say something's true, but real human beings who are actually experiencing the pain that this federal government is causing, I think, are incredibly important messengers at this time.
That's illuminating for you as well as the elected officials to know what the hurt is out in the streets.
100%.
Listen, we just avoided a government shutdown. A budget's been passed in Lansing. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So as we're talking right now, we're in the middle of the final days of that. But I fully expect that it will pass. And I will say that it's incredible looking at the difference from what the Republicans passed as their priorities and where we are now. So the Republicans passed what I think was probably the worst budget in Michigan history. I mean, what we saw were cuts to access to mental health care for kids, cuts for free breakfast and lunch for children, cuts of funding for rape kits and the Human Trafficking Commission and defunding the police. All these things that would have been
defunding police.
Yeah, a giant cut in the state police that they also had as well. They always are who they say we are, right?
They're the law and order party.
Supposedly, yes, yeah. But who would do that, right? And
wow.
so they make all of these massive cuts, and the governor, the Senate Democrats, the House Democrats stood together and said no. They're going to end up passing significant revenue increases. By the way, these revenue increases are mostly on businesses, which is great because that's really what should be happening. In Michigan, we have Michigan people have paid a huge percentage of our tax, and it's a regressive tax in Michigan. because it's flat. So this is actually not an increase in that. It's an increase in the actual money that businesses pay, which they should pay their fair share in Michigan. And because of that, we're going to save programs like Medicaid. And we're going to save breakfast and lunch for kids. And it's going to be significantly different than it would have been if Republicans are in charge. And if I can tell you one thing that shows the difference between a Republican administration and a Democratic administration, it's in their budget. I mean, when Democrats took the majority, we had the largest investment in education in our history, but also the largest investment in affordable housing in Michigan history. We actually had the earned income tax credit, which brought 30,000 kids out of poverty. That's what we do. When Republicans are in charge, they give big tax cuts for corporations and they cut services for people. That's what they do on the federal level, and that's what they do on the state level. And if you need a real I think budgets are statements of values. The difference in values that we both hold, it's where their budget was and where it's going to end up because Democrats stood strong. And we as a Democratic Party, I don't see my job as just winning election, it's winning the argument. I think it's a big difference between those two things sometimes. And so we have been in the 10 most vulnerable House districts going and actually knocking doors in their districts. Not just the Democratic Party, not my staff. Volunteers have been going to these districts and knocking on doors and talking to their people and saying, call your representative. He voted to cut these programs and you need to stop. We've been doing digital ads in those districts as well.
Are the people that are answering those doors responsive to what you're saying?
Absolutely.
Are they listening? Do you think they're going to do that?
Yes, absolutely. I've done the doors myself.
Yep.
So I was doing it last week and had some really great conversations with moms and with a guy who was a retired police officer that couldn't believe that Republicans would vote to defund the police. You know, I mean, so they're not getting that narrative from legacy media like they used to be.
No.
I mean, Democratic Party won 70% of the people that read a newspaper last election cycle. That's 30% of the population. We got to stop playing an old game. We got to actually get in there. And I will say this, it makes the field programs even more important. Doors are more important than they used to be because it's harder for people to actually get access to real information and you can have real conversations with people, which is frankly more rare now.
And people don't tend to be assholes face to face like they are in social media.
Yeah. I mean,
it's the last vestige of respectful communication when you're in front of someone.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's a, I think that social media has been a wonderful tool in some ways, but also has given many people the ability to be awful to each other, and I think has probably made our politics much, much worse, and probably allowed Donald Trump to
Absolutely.
get in power.
All right, let's talk about 2024. You lost to Tom Barrett.
I did.
Alyssa Slotkin moved up to Senate, so this seat that she had flipped from red to blue is now red. What happened?
I mean, I'll first say this. I certainly am sorry for the loss, but I'm more sorry for the country than anything else. I never had a dream to be in Congress. I will say a couple things. One, I think nationally, Democrats did not have a message that spoke to the economic pain that people are experiencing in this country. And we fell victim to that as well. I think that when you start the campaign, as Democrats did last year, by saying that the economy works for people, they know it's bullshit, right? I mean, this generation is the slowest generation in American history to buy a house, to buy a car, to start a family. The price of eggs just an added insult to all of that.
Right.
In 1960, the average CEO made 50 times what their employee makes, and now it's 360 times.
People don't know that.
But they do know something's wrong.
Yes.
They know that they're working harder than their parents did at similar jobs, and they're making more money, and it means less to them.
Right.
And that their lives are infinitely harder than they were. And I don't think the Democratic Party had an economic message. And I think the candidates that won were able to I think Senator Slotkin, Kristen McDonald-Rivet, were able to actually pivot out of that towards that. Now, we were in the most expensive media markets in Michigan. It's crazy that districts in 3 different media markets. And so you don't get the same variety of ability to run different messaging. And most of it comes from the federal level. I will also say that the over-consultanizing of the Democratic Party is a huge problem.
Hallelujah. Thank you for saying that.
Oh, I believe it in my soul. I saw it. Because what we saw was basically there's a national message. You have to hire consultants that are approved by the national people. They know that their future job is tied there. So you get the same advice. It's a loop, right, of the same advice over and over again. My career, I don't know if you know all my career. I mean, I sued every major bank in the country to get them to stop illegally foreclosing on people's homes. We hired an attorney to handle individual cases of foreclosure fraud. I had fought in the legislature to protect firefighters with cancer when Governor Snyder refused to actually fund a program that he had promised to fund. And a firefighter had died in my district with no protections. I've spent my life as a fighter for good, and I don't think anyone was interested in telling that story as part of a campaign. And I think that we got to stop running as Republican light. We got to make the actual argument for the things that we believe in. And I will say that as a personal failure, maybe I didn't fight back enough. And that's a fair point that people can make. I can tell you right now that I'm fighting back pretty hard now. I learned valuable lessons of what needs to change.
Well, I'm glad to hear that because I think you'll agree, Democratic Party is broadly unpopular now. And as a prominent member of the Democratic Party, how do you think Dems need to revitalize their image ahead of the 2026 midterms?
I think people need to see us as a happy warrior. I do think that we need to be optimistic still. I think optimism is a powerful thing, and if there's no hope, there's no point. That being said, we also have got to be someone who people feel is fighting for them every single day. And I think that we've lost that. And let me give you an example. At Michigan State, my son was at one of the worst shootings, that's happened in the state. Another one just happened over the weekend.
Horrible.
He called me in that chaos. And I don't think I ever really understood fear as a parent until your kid calls you and you hear screaming and yelling. At one point gets to a place and he asked me what to barricade in front of the door. They were right walking into the Union when the gunshots happened there. So they were right in the middle of this. And, I was one of the lucky ones at 2:00 in the morning. I had to pick up my kid. And by the way, I've marched with families that never saw their kids again. So I'm lucky. But those kids got up the next day and they marched down to the Capitol building and they demanded action. And they, instead of thoughts and prayers, they got safe storage laws and background checks and extremist protection orders from a Democratic trifecta. And now at MSU, the MSU Democrats are the largest chapter of College Democrats of America in the country. Now, why is that? They saw their actual work turn into results.
They saw their power.
They saw that someone listened to them, that someone took action. And what we have now, we need to bring that to the soul of the Democratic Party. Not just on gun safety, which is important, but on all things, and most importantly, on the economic issues that actually affect families every single day. They need to feel like we are fighters. They see the Democratic Party as weak. We don't defend our stuff. They see us as Republican light. They see us in all these other ways. I think the party is a force for good in the world, but we got to prove it to them. There's a line in the movie American President that if you don't give people water, they'll drink sand. Trump is sand. He is bullshit and blame. But we got to give people water. I don't blame this country for Donald Trump being president. I blame us. We have a responsibility as people who believe that the Democratic Party is a force for good in the world to get back in and make the argument and actually go and win elections. And that's the other thing that I will say is that too many people in this party, I'm sorry there's so much, but too many people in this party think it's our job to be right, and I'm tired of that too.
Hallelujah.
You got to make the actual argument. Nobody gets a free pass in this country. You don't get, the idea that it's okay just to be right and that everyone will recognize that we're right and good and they'll vote for us. That's not how it works. You got to go out and make the argument. And I think that's another place where we have frankly failed.
So if Democrats are going to embrace a message of hope, empowerment, and stronger messaging, what is it we should stay away from?
This idea that we have to abandon who we are, that's not true. I mean, I will tell you this. If this party is a party that has to walk away from marginalized people, then I won't be part of this party, and I certainly damn won't be the head of it. I'm proud of who we are fighting for social justice. It's just that we have got to be willing to say that we fight for all people. What we have lost more than anything else, I think, is that we forgot who we were. We are a party of working people. We are supposed to be fighting those that are in power, those that have the haves, in order to make sure that every kid has free breakfast and lunch, that everybody has a chance to survive in America. We're supposed to protect people, and we stopped really, I think, even communicating in those things. And what people want, most people aren't looking for a handout. They just want it to be a little easier to raise a kid, a little easier to buy a house, a little easier to start a family. That's all they're looking for. They're not looking for somebody to just hand them a solution, but they want government to stay out of their personal lives and to make their economic lives fair. That's what we're missing in America.
Yeah, you mentioned housing a few times. I am a real estate agent, and for the record, I didn't demand that you use me as an agent in order to have you on my show, but I am working with young people, and they're not 20-year-olds anymore. I'm working with young 40s because that is the point where a lot of people can afford to buy housing. So people that are living in a house don't realize the hurt that's out there. People are living with their moms and their dads and their brothers and their sisters and renting rooms like it's the Depression era.
Yes.
So yeah, that is a really big deal for people. And talking about young people, there's a huge divide for young people and others between progressives and moderates in the Democratic Party. As chair of the Democratic Party in Michigan, what do you think of young progressives pushing to change the party more left?
Well, first of all, we need that. I mean, that's actually the soul of the party is the people that are actually pushing for more. I think that's not a bad thing at all. I do think that sometimes we get so caught up in our differences sometimes as Democrats that we fail to see where we agree.
Right.
And so, let me give you an example. The whole, do we call them oligarchs or kings? Can we just call them assholes and move on and get back to the fight?
Yeah,
or
motherfuckers.
Yeah, sure. Motherfuckers would have worked too. So, I mean, to me, that is when the Democratic Party put its finger on the scale and made it harder for Bernie Sanders to become our presidential nominee.
And like they are in New York.
Yeah, I'll get to that one for sure. But when we did that, we lost so many people. The Democratic Party has no business picking the candidates. We are a party of the people that actually are represented. And so should they have those fights? Yes. But I can tell you that it's pretty hard to get people to come back to something if they don't feel like the fight's fair.
Right.
And so my pledge is we have a really interesting Senate primary right now. I am not endorsing any of the candidates, but I want the robust debate. And I want them all to come together afterwards and fight to make sure that we hold that Senate seat. But if the Democratic Party gets involved, I can understand why people wouldn't want to come back. So we're not going to do that. I think if you talk to any of the candidates, we're treating you fair. But I'll also say with Mandami, first of all, his message on economics is exactly, I think, what Democrats around the country are looking for. They want somebody, and I think what's honestly what people are looking for. They want somebody that's actually going to talk about income inequality and the reality of what that's done to America. So I think that's really important as well. The other thing I'll say is that it's a pretty hollow argument for us to say blue no matter who, but not when your candidate wins.
Right.
So, I am a I wouldn't say no matter who, but pretty much. I'm a blue 99% of the time. I can give you Karen Witz that doesn't count, but
How about blue even a few?
yeah. But I would say that Democrats trying to find a way to not have a Democratic candidate win there is, I think, a huge problem that's going to drive people away from this party. And if I was the state party chair there, if I was an elected official there, I would be endorsing him immediately after he won the primary or beforehand. But that has to change because it's pretty hard to get people. Here's the thing. Every choice on a political candidate is in somewhat a compromise. And that's only because if there's any human being that you actually agree with 100% of the time, then you're the candidate or you're in a cult. I mean, one of those two things is true because there's nobody in the world that I agree with 100% of the time, right? Nobody. Right. And so it's always going to be that sort of compromise, but the Democratic Party the Democratic Party trying to go in and say that they're not going to support a candidate that is a Democrat and fighting for our values, we absolutely should not do that. And so I think it's a mistake.
Let me circle back. Where do you think you fall on the scale? More moderate?
I hate that
progressive?
question.
I know you hate it.
No, I hate it because it's such an oversimplification of the word.
Yeah.
I think if you went back through my record, I'm a pretty damn progressive fighter. So if you went back through I sued every major bank in the country to get them to try to pay their taxes and to stop illegally foreclosing on people. I have supported progressive causes my whole life. At the same time, in the legislature, I'm also a realist and had to negotiate with Republicans and certainly had, in order to get things done, had to make compromises. So I don't like labels. I think my favorite would be a progressive realist, but you can all decide what that would actually mean.
All right, that's fair enough. Let's talk young voters again. We know we need to win them over and bring them in, get them to vote. The biggest divide, they say, between them and the Democratic Party is the Gaza and housing issues. So what do you do? What do you plan to do to close the gap?
Well, first of all, I was endorsed as chair by both the Arab American and Jewish caucus. And we have been working together, and I think that's really important. They've actually done joint messaging on the immigration raids and those things. So I do think that there is space. I think one of the biggest problems that this party had was not allowing a Palestinian to speak at convention.
Yeah.
And the way that people were treated at our state convention when they showed up to support their candidate. More people want to show up to the Democratic Party to support candidates. I'm all for it, and we should be actually working with them. One of the problems is if you're not listening, if you're not providing actual space for people, then of course they don't feel welcome. And I think that what Donald Trump did was smart. He saw the pain that was happening and saw that the Democratic Party was literally ignoring people, and then he went in and tried to fill the void. At the same time, I think that the shift has, in many ways, happened in the sense that of where the Democratic Party is. So, if you look at statements that we've made, we had a state central member who was on the flotilla, and I put out a statement saying that I wanted both them to be treated fairly, that the food should be delivered, and that we need an end to the starvation and we need a ceasefire. And at the end of the day, a long-term two-state solution peace that releases hostages on both sides and all of that. And I think that's really a statement of where most people are when you talk to them. What I will say more than anything else is that I think the Democratic Party has got to stop just listening to the people they want to hear from. You have to listen to all the people in the Democratic Party. And so we've changed that significantly where I sit as chair. The other thing that I will say, that you talked about housing, we did in Michigan, when we had the trifecta, make the largest investment in affordable housing a year. It's $15 million a year investment in affordable housing. I'm not saying it's enough, but it is certainly a start. And we didn't even talk about it in the campaigns.
Wow.
I mean, that's part of the problem too.
Right.
We brought 30,000 kids out of poverty. We didn't even talk about it in the campaigns.
Right.
We've got to do a better job of actually selling the things that we do as well. So there's a combination of those. Of one, ironically, is that we are not listening, and then on the other side, we are not talking either. And I think that's a big problem for us.
There are two major ballot initiatives gaining momentum right now. One's called Invest in My Kids, which would tax the wealthiest Michiganders to raise about $1 billion annually for public schools, direct to public schools, and Michigan for Money Out of Politics, which would start limiting corporate PAC contributions. Yay, and crack down on dark money in Lansing. These are grassroots-driven campaigns that many Dems on the ground are already supporting. Will the Michigan Democratic Party formally endorse these ballot petitions? And if not, why not?
So we have a process we have a legislative process that involves actually the grassroots. So resolutions are submitted to the Democratic Party through a process. We have a resolutions committee that was elected, and a state central committee that was elected by the members of the Democratic Party. And so if I could wave my hand and say we endorse things, that would be great. But I'm not a dictator, and something the president should learn about too. And so the way that process actually works is that we have resolutions that go through that process, and they're voted on at State Central Committee. I fully expect that in the December State Central Committee that we'll be having a lot of those conversations. I think Invest in Our Kids is very simple, and I can't imagine a world where we don't endorse it. The other one I think is exactly right. I mean, I support End Citizens United. I don't want any corporate money in our system, and as long as it's on both sides, I agree with it 100%. That being said, I think that there are a lot of details that people are still trying to figure out of everything. It's complicated in what certain parts of it mean. So I think there are still people trying to figure out. But I fully expect that those are two that actually support our values. I've always talked about. I think Citizens United was one of the worst decisions in the history of our country, and has led to a huge lack of progressive things getting done. And I think that if you actually looked, Congress has not gotten much done since Citizens United.
Which we're getting used to. Isn't that a shame?
And unfortunately, yes.
So listen, we're about a year away from the 2026 midterms. What do you envision being the biggest issues on the table for Michigan Democrats?
So I think we got to get back to kitchen table issues. I think that we need to start talking more about housing affordability, about access to child care, about the cost of health care, and access to health care. And those are the things that I think are most important in an election. And the lack of wage increases for people across this country and across this state. And so I think that it's easy to care about the other stuff if your home is fine. But when you're making the decisions about whether you are going to pay your mortgage or be able to afford that prescription drug, if you're whether you can afford to send your kid to college or not, those are all things that I think are essential to who you are as a person. And if you want to talk about life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, which is what government's supposed to be about, there is no liberty without economic liberty. There is no pursuit of happiness without being able to afford the most basic things in life. And so I think that's what we have to get back to as a Democratic Party, of being strong champions for those things.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, now we're going to start the fun part.
Okay, great.
And it's called the lightning round.
This rest of it wasn't fun? I was having a good
it was
time.
fun.
So.
It was a little heavy. It was illuminating. It was very valuable and worthwhile. But this is where you get a little bit lighter questions, except for the first one. And I want you to answer this as honestly as possible.
Yeah.
Most underrated Michigan politician people should know about.
Oh, wow.
Oh, I see a bead of sweat. I haven't seen a bead of sweat yet.
I got to pick a person.
Yes, you do.
My brother, Kevin Hertel.
Okay. All right.
He's a hell of a good public servant. He works his ass off. He won a district by 400 votes. I don't think anybody else could have won.
Wow, that's slim.
Did it by working hard. But like the work he's done in the legislature, I mean, he will be a tough act to follow in that district. And I'm proud of him every single day. He's my little brother.
Okay.
Same hairline.
What's the one issue you can't avoid when you're knocking doors in Michigan?
I mean, potholes is still a big one when you're knocking doors. I will say that for sure. But I think a big part of it right now is just the fear that people have. People feel like we're losing who we are as a country, and I agree with that.
Okay.
I agree with that a lot.
What's your favorite? What's the best pure Michigan season? Fall colors, summer with the lakes, spring tulips, winter skiing. What do you think the best season in Michigan is?
I will say this. I love Michigan. One of the best parts of living in Michigan is that we get all those options. Sometimes shorter versions of it than others. I like the spring. I like the fall. I mean, usually I would say baseball season, although the end of this one was pretty rough. But Lions football season is pretty good too. Well,
listen, we'll segue into that. Who are your picks to make the Super Bowl?
I mean, the Lions for sure.
For sure?
Yeah, listen, I have been a fan my whole life. My father had season tickets at the Silverdome. I watched some real bad teams over the years. My son was in the back seat one year, like 5 years ago, and he said, "I think the Lions are going to win the Super Bowl." And I said, "Oh my God, I am so sorry I did this to you. How could I make you a Lions fan?" You know, I mean, he's in London studying right now. We still watch games together. So if my team is this good, they're going to win the Super Bowl. And also, you have to understand that I am an optimist, and I will talk about why that's important in politics, but it's also important as a sports fan. On the other side, you know, it's hard not to go with the Chiefs, even though they have not looked very good so far. I mean, it's just hard to bet against the Mahomes in that regard.
At this moment, and this is our last question, at this moment in time, what excites you most about our Democratic Party?
What excites me most is traveling around the state and seeing the people that are still willing to give up their time, still willing to go and do the damn work, especially with all their fears, with obviously a result that they're disappointed about. They still get up and they still go out and they still protest. They still knock on doors. They still believe. And to me, that is really important. I get asked all the time about, do people think we're still going to have an election? I am an optimist. I'm an optimist for a couple of reasons. One, it is impossible to do the work that we do if you do not believe. If you do not believe that it is possible, then those that don't think don't do the work anyways, and the result will be absolutely the same. So you have to believe in your soul that it is possible. And I will tell you this, wild-eyed optimism has done me pretty damn well. I came in to 11 seats in the state Senate. We were in the super minority. People said that it was crazy to talk about building towards a majority. Now, we got lucky along the way. We recruited people like Mallory McMorrow and Winnie Brinks to run for seats, and my brother Kevin. We got fair maps for the first time in Michigan history. Mm-hmm. But that first year, we went from 11 to 16 seats under the old gerrymandered maps. Most pickups since Watergate.
Wow.
And nobody thought, from the very bottom, got to the first majority in 40 years. Now, if we had walked in and said, you know what, we've been in the minority for 40 years, it's just going to be that way. Who wants to do the damn work? Would we have ever gotten there? The answer is no. Would we be able to take on the banks and save people's homes? No one takes on Bank of America thinking they're going to win, right? You have to be willing to believe that it's possible to do the work. Optimists are the people that have always got big things done. People like Harvey Milk was an optimist. Martin Luther King was an optimist. You have to be. And so I get the doom scrolling. I get the circular firing squad. Okay, I understand. We got to get ourselves off the damn mat and go back. I started this race for chair 3 days after I lost an election. Did that hurt? 100% it hurt. I got up and went back to work because I believe that we are a force for good for the world. And so I'm going to keep fighting. I'm going to keep believing. I hope I can convince others to believe. I think we're doing that going around the state. We're actually going to places the Democratic Party has never been before, or at least not in a long time. And to me, at the end of that, it'll be worth it. We'll take this damn country back.
Curtis Hertel, Michigan Democratic Party Chair, thanks for being here today and giving us all a little more hope.
Thank you, my friend. Good seeing you.